Ronnie Moas says, watch the top 10 to 20 in market cap for investing in crypto. Ian Balina is all about those altcoins. So what does Tone Vays say? We found ourselves actually without words, speechless, a few times during our conversation with this trader and analyst. That doesn't happen very often, because if it did, it would be the Silent Crypto Podcast. You may also want to know what's going on with the cryptos. Is this a bear market or just another dip? We've got thoughts, and we'll toss in our 2 Doge worth. It's all the fun, frivolity, and fabulosity you'd expect from episode number 97 of the Bad Crypto Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition.
Who's bad?
What's up, Travis and Joel? I've been loving your shows since December, and now I am directing a cryptocurrency adventure drama short film, which I can't wait to unleash upon the world. But I've been following your show as long as I've been following cryptocurrency, and you've made the adventure a lot of fun, so stay bad.
What are you sure of, Mr. Travis Wright?
I am sure that this is going to entertain folks today. Tone Loc.
Yeah, he's not Tone Loc, he's Tone Vays.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
It is a little Bitcoin wild thing, though. This conversation was very surprising for me, and I don't want to put any spoilers out there. I kind of want to wait until the reveal happens in the actual interview itself.
Well, just one thing to know about Mr. Tone Vays is that he is a Bitcoin maximalist. And what does that mean, you say? Well, you will find out.
You will find out. Welcome to the Bad Crypto Podcast, the show for maximalizing all things crypto. I'm Joel Comm. He's Travis Wright, and together we are the Blockchain Blockheads.
We are glad you're here. And you know what? We have heard that some folks like us to banter a lot. Some folks like us to banter a little. So we're going to mix and match our banter around. How about today, Mr. Joel Comm, we get in the news?
Let's do it. Mr. Travis Wright, I'm not even really sure what this means. So, because I don't know how the SEC views commodities, but the news that happened here recently is that a U.S. judge ruled that cryptocurrencies are commodities, which that's different than a security, right?
Different than a security. So the security the SEC is in charge of, commodities, the CFTC is in charge of. So they have the broad leeway to interpret the federal law regarding commodities. And, this particular judge said that is how they're going to legally define cryptocurrencies as commodities. And now it's not, government wide. This was this one judge who has stated this, but that's creating some precedent. And there was a fraud lawsuit against Patrick McDonnell, who is a New York resident that was charged with cryptocurrency fraud scheme with his company CoinDrop Markets. And the CFTC complaint was filed back in January. And the defendant was trying to use, the unregulated nature of crypto to have his case dismissed. And then the federal judge ruling said, nope, these are commodities, and we're going to move the case forward. Now, up until this point, crypto has been, according to the IRS, crypto is a property, not a commodity. So it seems to me, Mr. Joel Comm, that there is going to be some additional clarification about this as we move forward.
There is going to need to be clarification. I'm linking a article on Find Law that is all about securities versus commodities if you want to learn more about this. But, we know securities are stocks, bonds, that type of thing. And, when you buy a security, you're investing. So, for example, a stock that can be in a publicly traded company. It can go up and go down. Bonds ensure a rate of return and so forth. But a commodity, the difference between them lies in what's being sold. When you buy a stock, you get a share in the company. But when you get a commodity, you buy goods themselves before they actually exist. A buyer agrees to purchase X number of units of whatever the good is at a set price to be delivered later. Now, they're a form of investment as well, but it says here in this article that a commodity's defining feature is its interchangeability. One unit is essentially the same as another unit. So does that change the whole crypto to crypto thing, right? If one is the same as another, then how do you distinguish between the differences? This article says, for the most part, it's about quantity.
Dun, dun, dun. To be determined at a later date, Mr. Jocom. We don't know yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll have to figure that out. Well, we won't. Somebody smarter than us will figure it out, which is a good
space
thing.
is evolving, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is new. The regulators are trying to figure out how to regulate, because regulate is going to regulate and haters going to hate, and other people are going to do what other people do. But this is important, as this is a developing thing, right? Crypto is not really in a box. It is not defined fully yet. And taxes are hard to figure out. This is hard to figure out. So hopefully over time we get a little bit more defined in what it all means, the way everybody stays safe and comfortable in their crypto bubble.
Here's an article from Bloomberg, and it's about our friend Patrick Byrne, the CEO of Overstock.com. Mr. Byrne. He recently spoke at the North American Bitcoin conference in Miami. Apparently he was wearing a red "Make Bitcoin Great Again" hat and a t-shirt that had the words "Dirty Hippie" on them. And basically what he said is that Wall Street is going to be replaced by crypto. And he says, quote, "The simplest way to fix them is to drag Wall Street behind the barn and kill it with an axe and recreate it on blockchain." So he's all about global ledgers, and he thinks that capital will be completely unleashed, that money will pour into crypto as it begins to gain over stocks.
Yeah, he mentioned, he prophesized that blockchain and other, Bitcoin and other digital currencies are going to solve like the pension crisis, maybe the social security crises that are in different places, help revolutionize security lending, eliminate and eradicate poverty, and potentially reduce terrorism. Because once you have these global ledgers, all kinds of things can happen. Capital is unleashed. And so very interesting to think about. And he has his own blockchain platform called T0. They are selling about 300 million in T0 tokens or something like that?
Yeah, they already raised 100 million in pre-sale, and on their platform, the first set of tokens that's going to trade there is the Kodak coin, which is Eastman Kodak's attempt to become relevant again. So, mama, don't take my Kodachrome away.
Having another Kodak moment right now. Actually, Mr. Joel Kama, I want to talk about that. I found 4 rolls of film in a box from which I thought was the late 90s, early 2000s. And it turned out one of the rolls was pictures of the day my first child was born. So like literally the first picture of me holding my son was on this long lost roll of film that I developed and then picked up earlier this week, which was just crazy.
And apparently, Travis, things don't really change. I'm beginning to think that you were born with that Casey hat on, because you had it on in the photo as well, holding your baby boy.
I did. I had one of them on. I have about 50 different Casey Royals hats, all the different special editions. And then when they made the playoffs and they have all these different types of them. So you'll see, Travis is wearing the same Royals hat. It's probably not. It's one about 50 that I have.
You know what's a special edition, Travis, right? You're a special edition. You're one of a kind.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Joel Com.
And speaking of one of a kind, watch for the seg. Here it comes. Would you like to guess by country where you can get one Bitcoin mined for the lowest price?
Yes, this is an interesting article here on Marketing Watch.
That was a horrible segue, by the way. That was maybe the worst seg ever. Just gonna say.
That's okay.
Yeah, I can live with it. I'm good.
I'm not mad at you.
You mad, brah?
I'm not mad, brah. Not bad. The cost to mine one Bitcoin per country. Take a guess, Mr. Joel. Have you taken a look at this? Do you know which
I'm
country?
looking at it right now. So, yeah, my guess would be spot on. It wouldn't be a guess. It would actually be because knowledge. Because
you looked at the answer already?
That's good. Looking.
So one Bitcoin to mine in Venezuela is what, $531.
Yeah, so we're all moving to Venezuela. No, we're not.
We're not moving. That would be dangerous, Mr. Joel Com. Yeah. Bahrain, $16,000. What's the most expensive one? Looks like Solomon Islands, $16,000. Oh, $26,000. Cost $26,000 in South Korea to mine one Bitcoin. Good Lord.
Wow. So I don't think that's worth it. That's not worth it at all.
Mm-mm.
But if you want to go to Venezuela and deal with all the people that are trying to get out because they're starving to death under the dictator there, then, that's something.
I talked to somebody at a conference that said that they were buying up land in Venezuela in warehouses and setting up mining operations there. And now I know why.
Because of that.
$500 to mine a Bitcoin there. That's not bad.
So this episode's going to broadcast a few days from now while we are in South by Southwest, while we're there at the event. I just got off the phone with Bitbender, Jason Brink, and we were talking a little bit about the price of Bitcoin right now because there's a dip going on. It went sub 10,000. It might be there now. It might not be, but the markets in general had fallen below 400 billion. And I don't know where it is when you're listening to this, but I said, what do you think's going on? And he said something, and I said, you need to tweet that so we can link to it. And he did. He tweeted it. Now we're linking to it. And what he said is, I think it's important to remember that to the average person, Bitcoin disappeared a few weeks ago when the major networks stopped talking about it. Once they remember it exists, the inevitable media hype will pick back up. This is still about getting big banks a good entry. Interesting analysis.
It is. And another thing, we had somebody on, I don't know who it was that we were chatting with, but this was a really interesting way to look at crypto for me, was that don't look at Bitcoin versus the price of the dollar. Like, oh, Bitcoin is, $10,000 now. Actually look at Bitcoin as the price of the dollar compared to Bitcoin. Because if you look at Bitcoin, even a year ago or 2 years ago, the price of right now, $1 in Bitcoin is 0.0001. That is what $1 is worth. It's worth, wow, what is that? 1/10,000th of a Bitcoin. 0.0001. That's crazy. And if you think about that, like a few years ago, you could buy several Bitcoin for $1. So the price of the dollar is really falling against Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin right now is $9,600, it's 0.0001 Bitcoin is $1 right now. So it's still your mind is blown when you start looking at this, because fiat currency is always losing value. Bitcoin is typically growing in value because there's a finite amount of them. And right now, $1 is 0.0001.
That sounds binary. What is that in binary? 0001.
I don't know, probably letter C.
The letters. Oh, by the way, you know what? I've never actually told anybody about this. Now that I have it in my hand, I'm gonna do a quick commercial here, Mr. Travis. Right? That
actually 0.0001 is the decimal one.
Oh, well, there
that'd
you
be
go.
0.0001, not 0.00.
That's kind of like when people ask what one bad coin is worth. One bad coin equals one bad coin.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Wow.
Okay, so here's my quick commercial. That sound. That is the sound of the ka-ching button. And I've had people ask me about that. And those are actually available on Amazon.com. How do I know? Because they're mine. I've been selling them for years. It's this round button with an evil dollar sign on top. It's green and it makes that sound. If you go to Amazon and just go look for ka-ching button, K-A-C-H-I-N-G, you will find it. And you can be cool too and have one of the buttons with the currency that is decreasing in value every day.
You know what? Why don't we create a bad coin version of that? And then whenever you click it, it can go cha-ching. Who's bad?
Well,
be way cooler.
You guys are in for a treat right now because we've been on the lookout for people that add varying opinions to the Bad Crypto podcast. And Travis met Tone Vays on the blockchain cruise, and I did not know what we were in for. And there might be some periods of this where you can see my mouth, literally my jaw hang open because of what I'm hearing. And we welcome these opinions. We think you guys are going to enjoy this, but we want to know what you think. So make sure you go to the Bad Crypto Mastermind at badco.in/mastermind and look for that post for this episode. And please comment. I have a feeling that we're going to have a real fiery conversation over this, our interview with Tone Vays.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and citizens of Bad Cryptopia, this will be a treat. We've always talked about learning more about trading, being more effective in how we do trading in the crypto space. Joel mostly he's a hodler, so he's holding his cryptos. I mostly hold, but I have some coins I like to get more of. And when I was on the blockchain cruise last month, I guess it was last month or the month before, I guess it was a month and a half now at this point, I met this gentleman, Tone Vays, and he is a blockchain consultant. He's a researcher, but he is really legit when it comes to trading the crypto. And I sat through one of his sessions and he was showing some really cool stuff when it came to technical analysis and whatnot. And so wanted to chat with him and see if he wanted to come on the Bad Cryptos. And ladies and gentlemen, he said yes. So we're pretty excited. Mr. Tone Vays, how are you doing today, good sir?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, guys. This should be fun.
We're glad you're here. We're going to lay down a little of that funky cold Cardano.
Like, he's not Tone Loco, all right?
Oh, wrong one.
Tone Vays. Yeah.
We're not gonna do the wild thing. Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm good with it because
we're gonna do the crypto thing.
The crypto thing.
There's actually a really funny karaoke song on Cardano. It's on a crypto karaoke channel on YouTube. You guys should check that out. You'd love it.
There's a crypto karaoke channel. Oh my gosh, I'm in.
Yes, that sounds amazing.
Wait, I've learned all I need to know today. Thanks for the interview, Tone. You've got a website, libertylifetrail.com is your gig, and you are all about financial independence, right? You're all about using technology to promote economic freedom. When did you, shall we say, get woke to the state of money and why we need a new system?
Probably around 2011, 2012, when I started following the Ron Paul run for president then. And of course, Obama won second term. But that's when I really got into this whole, libertarian. And then that leads you into reading about like the anarcho-capitalist side of things. But it was around that time, like hoping that Ron Paul would get the Republican nomination to go up against Obama round two.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear how people sort of awaken. I thought Ron was an awesome candidate. Anybody who talks about wanting to audit the Fed, to me, is a pretty good candidate. Just on that alone, because it's never been audited. We have this financial system that is, unaudited. We don't know how much money they've actually printed out. We don't know how much money they have. It's not actually a federal agency. A lot of people think, oh, it's the Federal Reserve. It's part of the government. No, it's neither federal nor is it a reserve. And they named it that way to trick us. And so kind of crazy. So, so after you had learned about this, what was your journey down the rabbit hole after that?
Well, after that, I started watching more alternative media, started watching a couple of shows on RT. I don't know if you guys were watching RT back then. There was a show that I really liked called Capital Account. Eventually it became, Boom Bust with different hosts. Also started watching Max Kaiser. And that's how Bitcoin came onto my radar. And even though I heard about Bitcoin in 2011, I didn't actually go out to source some Bitcoin until the Cyprus incident of 2013. I believe it was in March 2013 when Cyprus banks got shut down. Money was confiscated, just taken from people. So that was like my final moment to say, hey, what can somebody do about this? How can someone protect their assets? Because leaving it at the bank is not a smart move. And investing in gold is actually also not a smart move because gold continues to go down, even though I was buying gold at the time. And I'm an analyst and I'm looking at it. And I bought into this whole idea, well, you got to buy gold, but gold doesn't go up. So doing a little more research led me to believe that gold is actually a pretty bad investment. But Bitcoin does everything they promise gold should be doing, but Bitcoin is actually doing it. So Bitcoin turned out to be a great investment at any time that you've bought it, other than unfortunately buying it at the very high, which I also did in 2013, buying some Bitcoin on that bubble to 250 due to Cyprus events. I took that very seriously. And ever since then, Bitcoin remains the number one use case to me, being it's the only asset that is just unconfiscatable when properly handled, stored, and secured.
Did you see the run up at the end of the year coming? Was that a shock at just how fast and furious, things went crazy in the crypto market?
The one at the end of 2013?
No, I'm sorry, 2017.
2017, right. So just like the big run up at the end of 2013 caught me by surprise, same thing with this run up. Like they were both, they shouldn't have happened. They were both just irrational exuberance, and the liquidity kind of dries up, but the demand continues and it just goes up. So what happened in 2013 was right after the Silk Road shut down, people thought that Bitcoin all of a sudden will become useless. And then the price goes up 10 times from about $100 all the way to over $1,000. And during that time, it was basically just this big hype cycle, plus the Senate hearings about Bitcoin seemed to go a bit favorable to Bitcoin as a technology, and that the government was going to take this wait and see approach. So that combination really helped just drive the price up, and everyone thought that Bitcoin would dominate the world. And then we suffered a 1.5 year bear market and correction. I felt in a similar position on this current run up in December, where I thought that going to 7,500 in October, November was more than enough. And we have gone up even more than we should at that point. And I was looking for a more sustained correction. Of course, once we started going up back above 7,500, my technical analysis says, well, you got to buy, you got to ride this bubble to make money. But I was not happy about it, because I knew the faster and more we go up, the more the pain is going to be, which is why the drop from 20,000 to 6,000 didn't bother me. And I was actually a big bear. I mean, I did get caught in a little bit of a bull trap. I'll be honest about that. But once we've fallen back down to 11,000, 12,000, I was calling for back to 7,500, another 50% fall, maybe even lower. And people were upset at me over that. But I kept saying, hey, the charts are telling me we're going to fall more, so I'm going to trust my charts. And why are you upset? I mean, right now, the price of Bitcoin is 11,000. 11,000 was an all-time high 2.5 months ago. If this was the new all-time high and we never went to 20K, you'd be insanely happy right now with how Bitcoin has performed.
Yeah. That's one of those things. It's like they don't necessarily take it all into perspective. When you look at it, you go, yeah, it was at an all-time high, 20,000. Now it's, the whole market went from, $250 billion on Thanksgiving Day. That's when it hit 250 billion for the first time. And then next thing you know, it was almost 850 billion. And then they're mad that it went down to 400 billion.
Look,
I want my cryptos to go to the moon now, Travis. Now.
I mean, I'm more encouraged by this than discouraged, because imagine if instead of going to 20,000, we would have gone all the way to 100,000. The fall back to current numbers would have been way more devastating than the current fall to current numbers.
Yeah, it's so true. And the thing is that once Bitcoin starts getting to these really large numbers, we've had these big falls before. I mean, these big, rises and then these big falls, they've happened in the past, right? The only deal is that whenever you're at $1,000 and you fall 25%, you go down to $750. But when you're at 20,000, you fall 25%, you just lost $5,000 off of that. And so people are like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I look at this like crypto's pretty much just beginning. We've had different people on the show and they've talked about how, worldwide there's $200 trillion worth of paper money. And if you add in all the stocks and the gold and the derivatives and everything else, we're sitting at between 1.2 and 1.4 quadrillion dollars worth of wealth worldwide. And we're sitting at a crypto market right now of $450 billion. And so to me, that seems like we're just getting going. What is your thoughts on where we are and where potentially we could be down the road?
Well, that's the thing. You have to define what you mean by crypto market, right? Because we have Bitcoin, which I think is just stands there head and shoulders above the rest. My next tier is altcoins that were created in Bitcoin's image, which means they were created kind of fairly. There isn't like this one guy at control. And that tier is also pretty small. And it's kind of, Monero and Litecoin are sort of at the top of that tier because Charlie Lee doesn't really have much control over Litecoin other than, having the most verbal influence, but it's questionable how much verbal influence he even has.
Well, and he sold his entire stack. So, there's that.
Well, you don't know that, right? He says he did. Like in reality, I mean, he has a reputation for being honest, so you can assume he did. But in reality, you can't trust what anybody says, right? Like you can't trust I could have 0 Bitcoin. You just don't know. I could be just like talking for the last 3 years and never bought a single one, right? So
are you lying to us, Tone Vays?
It's
not nice. Don't lie to us about that.
To me, Bitcoin is head and shoulders above the rest because all the innovation is happening in Bitcoin. That's where the most number of qualified developers are. I mean, stuff that is developed for Bitcoin gets absorbed by numerous altcoins. So far, nothing that has been purely developed for an altcoin has never made it its way into Bitcoin. So to me, Bitcoin is at the top. The next tier are coins like Monero and Litecoin. Maybe there are a few others, but I kind of focus on Monero and Litecoin. Now, to me, these coins aren't like necessarily scams. They're more like test nets. And while I think they are fair and legit, I don't consider them good long-term investments. Sure, you can hold them short-term when Bitcoin has its, issues with, large cost of a transaction fee, a clogged up mempool. They could be a little bit useful. Monero could be a little bit more private than Bitcoin at the moment, could be a little bit useful. So at the moment, they're borderline useful, but long-term, I don't see much. After that, we have the next tier of altcoins, which is like 99.5% of all other altcoins. To me, these altcoins had very questionable beginnings. They have a single developer at the helm that makes all the decisions. And these are coins like Dash. These are coins like Zcash. These are coins like Bcash. Like, to me, these are pretty scammy because the whole intention was for one or two guys to get rich by either doing something shady in the beginning, by insta-mining for themselves, and then changing the rules at will, like making it half proof of stake so they can continue to earn more tokens from their creation. That's
Can I just say, Tone,
yes.
you get the Bad Crypto seal of approval for calling it Bcash. We appreciate that.
I think I started that. I publicly, like I wasn't the one that came up with it, but I think I was one of the biggest podcasters that never called it anything else, almost from the beginning. So I think
Roger here is giving you the bird. He's flipping you off.
Well, he's flipping other people off that were following my lead. So probably, yeah. So I'm sure he's not very happy with me. So, but after that next tier of altcoins, then we have, and Ethereum is kind of in between that because, so Ethereum is also in that tier, right? Because Ethereum isn't really an altcoin. Ethereum is an ICO. That's the difference, right? So after the altcoins that had a real Genesis block, or let's say the second block, I'll give the Genesis block a pass, because the Genesis block was mined only by Satoshi. So if you are creating an altcoin, I'm okay with you mining just the Genesis block, unless that Genesis block represents 50% of all future tokens, right? So there is some discretion there. But Ethereum was an ICO. People seem to have forgotten the history of Ethereum. Ethereum is no different than all the ICOs are being built on top of Ethereum. So that goes into the ICO bucket. So the ICO bucket is the next tier. And to me, again, 99.9% of all ICOs are kind of scammy because all they're doing is they're creating an IPO by bypassing all of the regulation that took, hundreds, if not thousands of years to get to this level. And all these regulations are really there for is to make sure that only qualified investors are able to invest in speculative projects in return for speculative equity. And to me, like 99.9% of these ICOs are unregistered, unlicensed securities. And then we can get into the concept of application tokens, why they make absolutely no economic sense. Then we can get into why do you want your, what I consider a security to also be a quasi-currency? Why do you want this thing being traded and pump and dumped by 12-year-olds? Because there's absolutely no structure there. So ICOs fall into the third bucket of the actual bubble. The ICOs are the .coms of the late 90s. So when, I know this was like a winded discussion definition, but when you say the crypto market, what do you mean? Are you encompassing everything I just listed? Or do you have your own bucket for what you consider crypto?
Yeah, Travis.
Well, I would consider what Coin Market Cap says, right? It's the combination of all the crypto currencies, all of the tokens, and the coins, and they sort of lump them all, the Bitcoin with all of the companies that are altcoins and ICOs. Right now it's at $444 billion.
Yeah, I'm opening it up on my end now. Sure. So there's two problems to have there, right? One of them is even on CoinMarketCap, you can kind of display them as tokens, as coins, and they started to differentiate. Now, you also have to realize CoinMarketCap is like one of the first websites to show you this stuff. It was probably created by, a couple of 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that designed the webpage. They really don't care what they stick up there. And they're just summing them all up for convenience. And for some reason, the entire world seems to be treating those numbers as some kind of mathematical and financial standard, when in reality, it's a couple of guys that decided to add a bunch of numbers.
You're a ball buster, Mr. Tone Vays.
Yeah, he is. So here, you say this is the .com of the late 90s, but, here we are in 2018 and .com is huge. I mean, the web rules the world. Are you suggesting that most of these tokens that aren't Bitcoin are just going to go away and have no practical application? Or, is this here to stay?
Well, I'm actually suggesting that all of them will go away. So to me, there's only going to be room for one public blockchain, just like we only have room for one public internet. We're all using the same internet. We're just building our .coms on top of that internet. What I see from all of these ICOs and all of these altcoins, they're not companies on top of the public blockchain Bitcoin. They're competitors to Bitcoin itself. So I see all of them as going away. I don't see any use for pretty much all of that.
Now that to me seems really interesting, because I look at, I'm a marketing technologist by trade. Joel's a marketer and a futurist. He's been in this game for a long time. And I look at all the various different industries that can be disrupted by blockchain, right? And then, blockchain is its own thing. Then you have the decentralized apps that can be built on top of that. But then even as you move further up the food chain, you start talking about multi-chains and public and private side chains, and how, sometimes you want some data private and some data can be public, and you can access some data. And there's some really intricate, projects that are getting built out. I would be curious to hear why you think that some of those maybe don't have value because they're not Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of that bet, and that bet can go up in value for a while. I mean, again, if we just started 2018. So if 2018 is comparison to 1998, then we still have a good year and a half where the NASDAQ went up in value, more than doubled probably in that last year and a half. So my view on it is that decentralization is a gross technological inefficiency. Bitcoin and like torrenting, they're pretty much the only successful decentralization tools, because the only reason to decentralize something is to prevent censorship. Now, it was very important for Bitcoin to be decentralized because that was its function. Its function was to decentralize the way people send money to each other. Because before Bitcoin, the only decentralized censorship-resistant means of transferring money to each other was by handing cash from one person to another. which is kind of useless for the world of the internet. And we're pretty much internet creatures now. So Bitcoin was Satoshi set out to fix a very specific problem. That problem was that until governments treat money as property, the world needs a decentralized value transfer. Now, the way the government can fight Bitcoin is to declare money as property and say there's no such thing as money laundering laws. Kind of like, drugs are about to become legal. Let's say the US government says, hey, marijuana is legal, right? So there you go. So you can now buy marijuana on the internet. There'll still be an age restriction. So you may still need to use blockchain and Bitcoin if you're underage, to get around that restriction. But decentralization is a gross technological inefficiency, not efficiency. This is the big difference. It's a gross technological inefficiency to get around a censorship problem. All of these projects are trying to convince you that there is an inefficiency in contracts, and contracts need to be decentralized. But in reality, 99% of contracts do not have a censorship problem. In fact, you want these contracts to be legal because you may have to dispute these contracts in the future. So without a censorship problem, decentralizing something technologically is very inefficient. And a lot of these companies, including Ethereum, are trying to come up with a way to make them efficient. And they're like, well, we're going to go proof of stake and we're going to go sharding. And they have absolutely no guarantee that A, that math is sustainable, and B, how are they going to do that? How is Ethereum going to convince all of their miners that are mining this very profitable Ethereum token that they all need to just go away and people will just earn more Ethereum by holding more Ethereum? And everything is being built on top of Ethereum with this major technological problem.
We do have a censorship problem, though. In the United States of America, we probably have amongst the freest speech, but all around the world, there are countries that are heavily censoring, and there are institutions that are highly centralized that are controlling the information that is being dispensed and the world money supply and who gets what. Do you not see some of these other projects as empowering and overcoming that censorship issue?
Well, again, right? If we're talking about money and the transfer of money, that's the problem that Bitcoin solves. The proposition of Ethereum is that your contract is being censored, right? So, like that whole mess with the DAO and Slockit. So I pick on Slockit because it's a good example. Slockit was bringing you their project. Is I'm renting an Airbnb from you, and the lock that's on your door, the smart lock that's on your door that allows me to enter your house with you not there, needs to be totally decentralized. And the computation of me entering your house needs to be recalculated and stored and verified with every single block for the rest of time, for the rest of human existence, right? This is what they're telling you is technologically efficient, when in reality, no one is censoring the act of me entering your house through a smart lock, unless it's illegal for me to enter your house through a smart lock, right? So for example, decentralizing Airbnb or Uber only makes sense in cities and countries where Uber is actually illegal. Like Uber will always be more efficient as a centralized system where it can legally operate. A decentralized system of Uber or Airbnb will be grossly inefficient, and it will be annoying, and it will be horrible with horrible arguments and horrible disputes. But if that's the only option you have, because Uber is illegal and Airbnb is illegal, you'll deal with it. Like Bitcoin isn't always fast, and it isn't always anonymous, and it isn't always cheap to send a transaction. But you know what? It's the most stable, and when you have to do it, you're going to do it. That's the big difference.
Well, that's one of those things where, I see where you're coming from. I think you make some very valid points. Now, I've gotten to the point where, if I'm going to make a trade, I don't send Bitcoin over. I'm going to send Ethereum over. I'm going to send Lumens over because they're way faster and they're instantaneous, so I can make those trades that I want to make whenever I want to make them. And so I think there are a lot of different use cases, for the different types of companies that are popping up, and I wish them well. It's like, I like decentralization. Like, just for example, you're big on YouTube. We're not big on YouTube. And in fact, we just sort of had our podcast pop up. We would take our audio and we would add. We're nowhere on YouTube. They actually banned us because we're talking crypto. We weren't pumping and dumping or making any financial recommendations at all. They just decided to ban us.
You could be next.
And
I doubt it. I think I have a big enough following now. I mean, Twitter just tried to ban me, and I refused to comply with their request. And instead, I informed the world of Twitter that Twitter banned me for no reason. And I have 130,000 followers on Twitter, and Twitter support got flooded to where I got my account back within 24 hours.
Yeah, but there's others who haven't. There's others who have gotten banned that haven't gotten back and are losing their accounts. And it's highly centralized. I love that we're having this discussion, by the way. And I love that you are as bearish on everything but Bitcoin as you are, because I think these are questions that need to be asked. But don't you think that there's too much power in the hands of Google and Facebook and Twitter?
Well, it's sort of, right? I mean, again, we can have a whole discussion. I would love, there has to be more details there because, again, YouTube doesn't just ban for no reason. They had to provide a reason. And there are lots of crypto content creators on YouTube that never got banned, right? So there has to be something there. I'm sure YouTube has an explanation. And granted, YouTube is a big company that's part of Google. So even if they made a mistake in banning your channel, it might be a little hard to get someone on the phone, or to get someone to deal with the situation. So yeah, I mean, this happens. But the difference is with Google, you still have someone to deal with to at least have a chance to solve your problem. When the situation of the DAO happens, when a decentralized application just goes belly up because of technological incompetence, there's absolutely no recourse there.
Yeah, it's one of those things is that a lot of these crypto and these ICO companies, they have minimal, in some cases, no customer support, right, at all. And then people are going to have problems with their service. What happens in a situation where you're having customer support issues with a completely decentralized company and there's no recourse? I mean, it is kind of an interesting challenge.
And before you even get that far, who is actually overseeing that they're even building what they promised to build? How do you know, that these things have anyone working in the back end? I mean, once you ICO, all the money you will ever have is there. Now, your choice is, do you walk away with this money now, or do you try to pump this money to make more money, right? Unless you're going to ICO round 2. And there's absolutely no, oversight. People always say, well, we can, regulate ourselves. And my answer is no, you really can't. This is what I've been doing with people lately. What are your top 3 favorite tokens that you are thinking of holding for the long term right now?
An example? Okay, I'll throw a couple down.
Outside of the common ones, right? Like no Bitcoin, no Monero, no Litecoin, something.
No, EOS is one I like. I think Dragon Chain is interesting because of the platform. What I traditionally do investing wise, which is my own philosophy, is, I like the platforms or the protocols that others are building on top of, right? Because if there's a use case for that, like Ethereum took off, people are building on top of Ethereum. There's some other really unique solutions out there. I like EOS. I said Dragon Chain.
I like Bad
a couple
Coin.
Other ones.
I think Bad Coin has a huge future.
Well, I'll quickly mention EOS. So when EOS was releasing their token and their terms and conditions, they made it very clear that this token has absolutely no monetary value. It has absolutely no monetary function. They basically told you that they have zero obligation to do anything with that token. So the purchase of that token was 100% speculative. Now, you can say that, they're only saying that in the terms of conditions so the regulators wouldn't get them. Now, the regulators aren't stupid. So when the regulators see that you put something in your terms and conditions for the sole purpose of avoiding regulation, they will come down on you even harder, okay? Because they know that you're only doing it to pretend that you're not doing it. So that's actually even worse. Okay. Now, the concept of an EOS token is the same concept as the Ethereum token. These applications try to convince you that they need their token in order to function. In reality, they don't. See, Bitcoin needed a token to be moved around on the Bitcoin blockchain because that was the purpose of the token, to be moved around as money. Ethereum's token is actually to be used to pay for a smart contract. So in reality, what Ethereum is trying to convince people, and EOS and all these other application tokens, they're trying to convince you that Amazon would be more successful if every single product you bought from Amazon, the only currency you could use is Amazon speculative stock. They're trying to convince you that the only token to be accepted is their currency. Netflix would have a better business if only they accepted Netflix stock as the only currency for your subscription. I'll take it one step further, like eBay. The only currency on eBay would be PayPal. The only currency on eBay would be eBay stock that you now have to go buy. But how do you go and buy eBay stock in order to pay for something on eBay? You have to buy it from an exchange or a broker. So fine, you're going to go to E-Trade and you're going to buy the stock of eBay to buy from eBay. But the only currency that E-Trade accepts in order to sell you eBay stock is eBay stock. So it becomes this like crazy cycle where every single person only accepts their own currency that they print and create at will. And that makes absolutely no economic sense whatsoever. And I don't understand why the world hasn't figured this out yet. But hey, everything's pumping.
It used to be the way that it used to be, right? Like before these central banks sort of took over, there was, currencies that were in different areas. Like in the Civil War times, there was 10,000 different banks and currencies.
Yeah, it was a complete disaster.
Well, it's way better than having one person or one entity in charge of all the currency where they can print as much as they want. I mean, $1 in 1913 versus $1 today, we've lost 98+% of that purchasing power because of the inflationary aspect of that, which is why we all like, crypto, because it's deflationary.
Sure,
yeah.
That's true. While that is true, right? Having infinite number of currencies would have had even bigger inflation. The other problem of what happened during that time in American history is when Andrew Jackson eliminated that second Federal Reserve Bank and every single bank had the ability to print their own money, no one knew which money was legit and which money was counterfeit. That actually led to the creation of the Secret Service. And to this day, the number one job of the Secret Service is to deal with counterfeit U.S. money. Their second job is to protect the president.
Right.
Well, this is all fascinating stuff, and we appreciate your opinion. I know this is going to lead to some really great discussion within the Bad Crypto Mastermind. So you guys make sure and go in there at badco.in/mastermind on Facebook and share your thoughts about what Tone has said here. As we get ready to close out, then let's talk about the coin that you obviously believe in, and that is Bitcoin. So you're charting, you're doing technical analysis. Where do you see Bitcoin running here in the short term, here as we enter spring of 2018, and then by December 31st, what kind of projections would you make?
Lately I've tried not to make projections into the end of the year because like Bitcoin changes day to day. In fact, I've actually started making daily videos to try and keep my followers, up to speed on my views on Bitcoin. Yesterday, over this whole week, I was pretty bullish on Bitcoin that we're going back to 15,000. Last night, I warned my users that for the first half of this week, we are looking at a little bit of a correction over the first half of the week. Now, the correction has already started, and we've already fallen like almost $1,000 in the last 24 hours and change. So the correction is happening a little bit faster and a little bit bigger on this first day of my 1 to 4 day correction. So at the moment, I remain bullish, and I'm still looking for a price target of 16,000 going into the summer. However, if we continue to fall and we are back in the $9,000 range, I will probably be scratching that entire plan of 15,000 by the summer, and I may even be more bearish into the end of year, calling for lower than 6,000. And this is the thing with technical analysis. If you're going to follow another person for their price predictions, you have to follow everything they say. You can't just listen to this one podcast. This guy said we're going to be at 15,000 by the summer, and then 3 months later inform how wrong he was, because 3 days later he could have easily changed his mind and informed all of his normal consistent followers that his target is now 3,000 instead of 15. So this is one of the things that I try to educate people on. So my target, I'm still looking for a 1 to 4 day correction that started earlier today that I did inform my followers on a day in advance. And after that, at the moment, I am expecting a turnaround, looking for more prices. But like I tell people, I'm looking for a 1 to 4 day correction, and then I will reevaluate, and we'll see from there. So people will have to follow me on YouTube and watch my daily videos when I give my latest projections on what I see for the price.
You know, you've done some really interesting stuff when it comes to teaching people how to trade, right? And you have a really interesting process. That was one of the things that really, when I was sitting there in your session, I was like, dude, this dude knows some things about trading that most people don't know, and they wish that they knew. And you have actually built some technologies that work with TradingView, right? And so you're using some of the DeMark indicators. If you want to maybe just kind of real, I know it's a kind of a deep subject, but maybe talk about, you know, some of the ways to learn trading, and then why you view the DeMark indicator as such a valuable tool.
Sure. So basically, when I came into the crypto space, what I really do is I travel the world, I speak at conferences, I do interviews, and I try to educate people on how I foresee this technology, how I foresee the future. I think that's really important. At the same time, I feel that I have an expertise, and that expertise is trading. I have about 15 years of trading experience, even though that's not what actually earned me my paycheck on Wall Street. I was building risk models there. Trading was more like my hobby that I eventually quit my job for to become a trader. Now, within 6 months, I ended up, my job became a content creator like you guys, but I have a good experience trading, and I think I'm very good at it. I also have an expertise in educating and teaching, and my job on Wall Street did require that. I was educating developers and making sure that they understood finance and they were programming the finance correctly. So I brought my skill set into crypto, and that skill set is educating people how to make their own decisions when it comes to trading. So I don't actually want people following my calls. I don't profit from people following my calls. I try not to make too many public calls. Everything I do is centered around education and educating people how to make their own decisions when it comes to trading, and then they have absolutely nobody else to blame. And I provide the maximum amount of tools for these people to make the most informed decision, because not every trade is going to be profitable. I have now started doing these full day boot camps on educating people how to trade, and the one you attended on the cruise was like a 2-hour version of my 7-hour full day that I do monetize, and I do charge for that education for people to attend, because otherwise I'll be dealing with a room of 15,000 people. I was recently at a Tony Robbins event. I have no idea why he would want to do that, but then he is making money from every person. These are much smaller so that I can actually work and I can take everybody's questions. Now, I also do the same thing on my website. There is a learn trading section where I wrote it all out, hundreds of links there, so you can learn how to do it for free. Now, I really like the Tom DeMark indicator, and I've seen it used on Wall Street by many trading desks. In fact, I know of multiple trading desks and traders where the only thing they use is DeMark indicators. They don't care what any other technical signal is except the DeMark stuff. Now, all I did was code the logic of the DeMark stuff into TradingView, because TradingView gives you the ability to add your own scripts. And again, this is something that helps traders make the best decision. I also made some alterations to it because I think that code is slightly I think my version is a little bit better. I made a few changes. I took out a few prerequisites. I'm also going to be the better it's coded for TradingView. And again, like due to trademark thing, I don't really call it TD because it's not TD. I made some alterations to it. I don't want to get sued over a trademark violation, so I don't call it TD. But the concept is the same because the mathematical logic is public. So you would have to check out my YouTube channel and my website and read about this indicator and why Wall Street loves it so much and how it's helping people make more probabilistic trading decisions that they take on.
Well, there you go, gang. Tone Vays with some really interesting opinions and thoughts. His website, libertylifetrail.com. And you could see at Tone Vays, ToneVays on Twitter, and other links in the show notes. And Tone, thanks so much for joining and sharing with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you for having me on, guys.
Mr. Travis Wright, I'm not sure if he's gone loco or toned loco or what, but that was some interview.
You know, that's one of the things about bad crypto is we don't want an echo chamber here, guys. We're not trying to find
here, guys. Echo chamber.
We're not trying to find people who have the exact same opinion as us to just parrot, right? A lot of media, you'll notice if you pay attention, a lot of media out there will do that where they have their official talking points, and they will never go against those talking points. Now, we're always learning, right? When we started this thing, we said, hey, we're bad. We're learning as we go. We're still learning. We're not experts in this space by any means yet. We're still growing and learning. I look at life as being a lifelong learner. I always look at life as being a student. I look with the beginning, look at things from a beginner's perspective, and I always see new things. And that's why I think it was so great to have Tone on the show. And actually, when we had him on, I wanted to talk more about trading with him and his processes on trading because he's pretty fascinating with his ideas on how to trade and how to identify certain movements. And he's been pretty accurate over time. But when we ended up having this interview, it just sort of went its own way. And I said, you know what? That was great the way that it went because you know what? We don't always have to agree with people who come on the show. And I think it makes it more interesting whenever we're able to have open dialogues and conversations around things that, maybe we don't agree, but that's okay. We can agree. We can disagree agreeably, right?
I disagree.
And a lot of people within our culture.
But I do agree.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people aren't able to do that. They want to there's this sort of lack of tolerance for somebody who doesn't believe what you believe in today's culture. And I think if we could all agree to disagree agreeably, like the great Stephen Covey said in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think the world would be a whole lot better. It's okay to disagree. You don't have to be jerks to somebody you don't agree with. That's, learn from them.
Isn't it funny that sometimes the people who yell tolerance the loudest are the most intolerant?
Well, I read this thing last night. I watched this video about the Frankfurt School and critical theory and how, disagreeing with everything and being loud about your critique on things. It's really fascinating how culture is today. And there's this repressive tolerance that one side of the spectrum adheres to. They don't necessarily like tolerance. They like to repress it, and they like you to be tolerant within their belief system. And it's systematic, and it's been built intentionally. And it's really fascinating to kind of dive in and understand that. And then this repressive tolerance led to political correctness. And because it was like, here's science correctness, and who says and states the right thoughts, the right thinking. Well, that's politically correct. And actually, General Mao of China coined the term politically correct. And so I thought that was pretty interesting.
Stop repressing me, Mr. Travis Wright.
I'm trying, Mr. Joel Comm.
Well,
it's one day at a time. It's in my nature.
We are so glad that you are here as part of the Republic of Bad Cryptopia. Thanks so much for listening. If you won't mind taking a moment to review us wherever it is that you hear the show, we really do appreciate that. I know you hear us say it often, but that's because a lot of you haven't taken the time yet, and it means a lot to us if you do, because it means that you're the baddest of the bad, and it means that you listen every time Travis says,
"It disgusts me that you haven't left a review yet." Stay bad.
Who's bad?
The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.